Okay, we have Diane and Kilby here. Let's see. Okay, so all right, thank you. So hello everybody. Nice to see you all back. Thanksgiving is coming. I wish you all a good holiday. And this is our last event before Thanksgiving, and after that we'll have the last session in December. And Jonica will talk about this later. So this is our Mothers on the Mission seventh event. So this is we have received a lot of support from our school administration, TCC Foundation, and we're very glad to have Chad from TCC Wellness to be our guest speaker. And so thank you for your support, Chad. So as you know, our mission is to support single mothers through mentoring, coaching, and resources. Participants will have the opportunity to hear from guest speakers throughout the Tulsa community and TCC that are dedicated towards empowering women to fulfill their highest potential. So let me see, I'm gonna share from the beginning. Okay, so our next event will be Thursday, December the 3rd. That's our last meeting together. So today, chat's topic is the power of presence, kicking anxiety's butt. The power of presence in the terms of managing anxiety and stress and becoming more aware of our thoughts and the impact they have on our lives, including the Q&A. So, and then I will share a couple of things with you as from the coaching office, and also our student organization, students who are parents. President Jonica is going to talk about the last event on December the 3rd. Let me see, and here we go. So I'm taking the pleasure to introduce Chad. Chad is a licensed professional counselor in the state of Oklahoma. He has been employed with TCC since, okay, I'm blocking this, since September of 2019. Prior to TCC, the vast majority of Chad's professional experience is in the field of mental health, involves working with families and adolescents. All currently enrolled students are able to meet with Chad for 5 free counseling sessions throughout the academic year. He can be reached through email at chat.michael@tulsacc.edu, or you can call him at 595-7569. I have heard so many good things from the students I coached, and they have told me how helpful Chad's counseling sessions has helped them to overcome difficulties. So I strongly encourage you to make appointments with Chad if you need any help. Okay, so now I will take the pleasure to invite our speaker, Mr. Chad Mikkel. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Joy, do I have the ability to share my screen yet?
Yeah, I just stopped it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yep, I got it. Okay. So let's see what happens here. You're looking at my screen, but I don't think you're looking at it in presentation mode. Is it in presentation mode? No?
Presentation.
There we go.
Okay.
We're in business. I see Jonica's head nodding. Thank you, Jonica. You're going to be my visual cue for this. So thank you, Joy. I appreciate everybody letting me participate today. To be honest with you, this was not an organization that I was familiar with. So thank you, Joy, for educating me. It's good to be here. I'm working remotely, so it's always good, even though I can only see 3 faces right now, or 2 faces, in addition to mine. There are 2 faces I haven't seen in a long time, so it's always good to see new and old faces again in times like this. So as Joy mentioned, I am TCC's mental health professional. My name is Chad Mikkel, and just to be clear, every currently enrolled student here has access to me for roughly 5 sessions throughout the academic year. Those sessions are completely free, and most importantly, they are by law completely confidential. So I will have my contact information up at the end in case anybody's interested and wants to reach out. So when Joy asked me to speak today, I immediately felt a little bit of anxiety about what I was going to be talking about today. And I guess the way I sort of resolve that is that this topic I'm going to present today generally comes up in one way or another with virtually every student I work with. Depending on what the presenting issues are, may depend on how I introduce some of these concepts. But as a general rule, they're applicable to everybody. And so the title of this is called The Power of Presence, Kicking Anxiety's Butt. And that's a little bit of maybe a misleading title, because when we look at it, the power of presence can really accentuate and diminish a number of negative experiences we might be having in life, including symptoms of anxiety, symptoms of depression, overall stress, just to be being overwhelmed. So let's kind of look at some of the goals today. When we talk about the power of presence, some of the things that I really want you to walk away with after our, well, I think we have about 35 minutes together. I want you to learn how your thoughts impact your well-being. And although this may sound a little bit odd right now, we will all become, and hopefully get a few minutes to practice, being the observer of our thoughts. In addition to that, I want us to be able to develop the skill sets of being able to monitor our thoughts and change those thoughts to make sure that they're working for you, working for us. And then finally, time permitting, and I'll go a little bit quicker so we have it, we might practice a brief meditation today where we get to experience presence and kind of hone in our skills before we say goodbye today. So the benefit to you in all of this is if somebody can develop an increased awareness of their thoughts and develop the ability to practice presence in their life, we'll talk more about why, but by law, they will diminish anxiety and depressions or feelings of being overwhelmed or stressed in their life, and they're going to increase their ability to manage their thoughts, to become more mindful and present in the now, in the current moment, and creates better outcomes in their life. And the reason behind that is because whether or not you are or are not aware of this yet, your thoughts have a tremendous impact on the overall well-being of your life, which we're going to dive into a little bit more. So let's talk about this concept of the cognitive triad. It's very, very popular in the world of psychology, but basically what it boils down to this is, at the top of this triangle, you have your thoughts. And whether or not we realize it yet or not, our thoughts are really the genesis of everything that materializes in our life that we have control over. And so when we look at this cognitive triangle, at the top we have our thoughts, and in the world of psychology, your thoughts influence your feelings. And those feelings will influence your behaviors or your actions in life, which in return influence new thoughts. Thoughts affect feelings, which affect actions, which influence thoughts, which influence more feelings, more behaviors, more actions, and new thoughts. It's this giant feedback loop. You don't have to necessarily agree with it yet, but I want you to at least have the concept and understand it. We're going to look at what I would consider to be a pretty crude example here, but just to kind of put a simple one out there, let's say that, and if you're a human being and you've lived long enough, you've had a similar thought. Let's say that there's a thought that we are not content with sort of the natural shape in size of our body. For whatever reason, the thought is, I dislike the way I look. When somebody has that thought, that leads to feelings of being insecure. That leads to feelings of self-doubt. There's something about you that's inadequate. It could even lead to feelings as intense as feeling hopeless or angry at yourself for the way you look. All of those would be deemed negative feelings in terms of the way they make us feel. And that might lead to behaviors, and those behaviors can vary widely, but some of those behaviors might mean working out to an unhealthy degree to try to change our shape, or restricting the amount of food that we intake, right? Or if it really got us feeling down and lowering our self-esteem, we might just say forget about it and emotionally overeat, or put poor calories into our body. My point is that thought influence the way we feel, which then influence the behaviors or actions in our life. Now, if we follow through with the behavior, for example, of overeating, we'll say, that might reinforce a new thought that says, see, I was right. I've even put on some weight, which will reinforce all of those feelings of being inadequate or insecure or unhappy with the way you feel and look, which will lead to or influence additional behaviors in your life. Thoughts affect your feelings, which affect your behaviors, which influence new thoughts. So if you really stop and think about it, these thoughts have a tremendous impact on your life. There is very little you can manifest in your world under your control unless it was a thought first. I'm going to repeat a lot of the same things because I believe in reinforcement in terms of learning, and I want you to hear it multiple times in different ways so that it sticks with you. Your thoughts are the genesis of virtually all outcomes in your life. And if you really stop and think about it, you can't feel any certain way unless a thought initially led to that emotional sensation, right? Whether that's feelings of happiness because of a positive thought, feelings of negativity due to a negative thought, or anxiety due to uncertainty, those feelings can't exist unless there was a thought first, the genesis to this emotional experience, right? Those feelings then, in turn, influence all behaviors or actions in your life. It's a giant feedback loop. The problem is, most of us aren't really aware of the thoughts that are pumping through our brain. We may get glimpses of it, but as a general rule, your brain is kind of on cruise control. It's literally creating thoughts, images, memories, potential futures 24/7, right? And it almost becomes like the background noise. It becomes like the vacuum. And as a result, you sort of get desensitized to some of those thoughts that are pulsating through your brain. And you may have no idea why you're feeling a particular way, because some of these thoughts, they're automatic, right? You've developed sort of the habit of self-talk, or these thoughts are automatic, they're fleeting, meaning they happen instantaneously. And we're not always conscious of the fact that they're pumping through our brain, affecting our feelings and then our behavior. Here's another real crude example, but this morning I had to bring my kid to school, right? And this is their first week back in school, and I got there a little early. And so I thought I was going to be smart and I was going to bypass the huge line of people waiting for teachers to help the kids out of the car. And instead, I just kind of pulled into the parking lot. She's 7. I thought she knows where to go. She can just walk over to that door and wait there for a few minutes. Well, that was fine. It all worked out just perfectly fine. But then I'm driving out of the parking lot, and all of a sudden I have this very brief thought. What if something happens? Or what if she can't get in the building? Or what if an adult comes up to her and says, hey, you're not supposed to be here alone? And all of a sudden, I got the little butterflies in my stomach, right? I got that sensation of anxiety. So the thought was that created the anxiety. What if my daughter's not going to be okay? Or what if I've just done something wrong? Which led to feelings of uncertainty, anxiety, a nervousness, butterflies, right? Which then influenced my behavior. My behavior was I made it about 50 yards down the road in the neighborhood, And then I turned around and then I drove back down the street to make sure she was still standing there by the blue door. I curved back around in the neighborhood and did one more trip. And then I saw other adults with her and I thought, okay, everything's going to be fine. But the point of that very, very simple example was that my thoughts, even though they were brief and fleeting, they affected my feelings and they affected my behavior. I'm going to say one more thing about your thoughts. Your thoughts are one of the few things in life that you have total autonomy over. And by that, I mean you have total control over. There is nothing in this world, there is no one in this world that can create a thought for you. You have total control. And in a weird way, that's almost like a godlike ability, the ability to create something from nothing. People, circumstances, they can influence you, but no one can create a thought for you but you. We'll plug back into that later, but it's also a source of empowerment. Okay, so if we know that our thoughts are instrumental in affecting the way we feel, and we know that our feelings are instrumental in affecting our behaviors, and that contributes to new thoughts in terms of influencing new thoughts, one of the goals of this presentation from my perspective is that everybody that's listening now or the recorded version becomes better at monitoring your thoughts so that you become more aware of the genesis of how you're feeling and some of the behaviors that are playing out in your life. And one of the ways to do that is to become the observer of your thoughts. In other words, you're differentiating yourself from your thoughts. And I think we can probably all agree when I say it's a pretty common human experience to feel consumed by our thoughts, to become overwhelmed by our thoughts, to literally feel like your brain is sort of spiraling out of control. And if we're being totally honest with ourselves, oftentimes we identify with our thoughts. We don't see ourselves as being distinct or separate from our thoughts. And so I want to introduce this concept of becoming the observer. Meaning, when you're the observer of your thoughts, you've automatically differentiated yourself from your thoughts. You're no longer consumed by them. You have created a distance, a differentiation between you and your thoughts. And if you think about it, your brain is an organ, right? You are designed to use your brain. Your brain serves a purpose. Where do your thoughts come from? They come from your brain. You are not your thoughts. You are the occupier or the animator of your body, if you will. So if you're going to identify as the observer, you have to identify as something different from your thoughts. So this is kind of a clever way to do this, and it kind of teeters on spirituality here a little bit. And I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question. So if you're not your thoughts, if you're not your brain, because your brain is an organ, if you are the animator or dwell within inside of your body, what exactly are you? And so now we're going to explore a couple of options here. And I created this list based on some of my own readings and also based on some of the things that students typically share with me in my office. So you're not your brain, you're not your thoughts. If you have to define what you are, a lot of individuals struggle with this because, again, it does kind of teeter on spirituality or perhaps the non-physical aspect of our existence. But these are some examples of things that students have brought up in my office. What's the true essence of yourself? How do you identify? And some students have said energy. I've heard life force, consciousness, spirit, soul, my being, my biology, my psyche, my personality. All of these things are sort of metaphysical, right? If you identify with anything on this list, it's something that you as an individual have a sense or identify with. You feel that it exists, but you can't necessarily show it to anybody. There's no way to necessarily prove it. It's just something that you know based on your experiences. So I don't know if any of these words identify with you. If they don't, I would encourage you to sort of pick your own word that can help differentiate you from your thoughts and start identifying as the observer of your thoughts. Okay, we're going to pause for just a little bit of a second. We're going to transition. We're going to talk about this concept of being present. So when I say present, what I really mean is experiencing the now physically, emotionally, spiritually, being more mindful of the present moment. Specifically, you're experiencing the now without the interference of your mind, without the interference of your thoughts, without being consumed by your thoughts, without whatever you're doing, the ability to experience that without having to do it through the filter of your mind, right? Anybody who's listening, anybody who's watching this, I guarantee you, whether you're aware of it or not, your mind has consistently taken you away from the present moment. There is nothing that we typically do without the influence or the background noise of the mind, again, sort of providing that filter for how we perceive the world. If you really think about it, the mind is constantly detracting you from the now. And we're going to talk about the importance of that in just a second. But let's examine the mind just a little bit further. Your mind is really an expert at doing numerous things, right? We can't function without it. For that, we're grateful. But when we're not intentionally in control of our mind or utilizing it as the tool it's intended to be, our mind tends to do really three things. First of all, our mind tends to ruminate on the past. And you can chalk this up to primordial beings, right? We always had to remember the things that created danger in our life in order to stay alive. Our mind is an expert at creating a database of past memories. Again, it tends to ruminate on those. Not always, but there is a tendency to revert back to the negative, especially if we're dealing with sensations of anxiety or depression, right? Our mind also has a tendency to anticipate the future. Our mind can anticipate positive outcomes, but when left to its own vices, our mind tends to anticipate potentially negative outcomes in the future, creating thoughts that lead to anxiety based on uncertain future outcomes, right? Third, our mind is an absolute master at creating alternate outcomes for us, alternate realities, right? Everybody in this room can relate to driving your car, hitting a red light, and all of a sudden coming back to the present moment and realizing you have absolutely no idea how you got there. You were completely daydreaming, right? Your mind was on cruise control, automatic pilot. Why is that a problem? Well, we just said that virtually 99.9% of all negative emotions, all negative feelings that are a detriment to our well-being originate from our thoughts. And if our mind is constantly ruminating on the past, constantly anticipating the future, or constantly creating an alternate reality, we don't have the ability to be present. And when we're present, that literally means we have the ability to calm our minds and experience the now. And if we do that, again, by law, we have no choice but to experience diminished anxiety, diminished symptoms of depression, diminished stress, diminished symptoms of being overwhelmed, because we have developed the skill set of quieting our mind. So, how do we become present? Well, we have these things that are called grounding techniques. And the purpose of grounding techniques are to ground you in the environment, in the external. Again, by law, if you're more focused on your environment, the external, you have to be less focused on the internal. on your thoughts, right? For some people, this is easier than others. For example, by nature, I'm an introvert. I like to recharge by shutting the rest of the world out, right? That tends to lead to me daydreaming or creating fantasies, right? Or getting into deep thought. I get lost in my head, and sometimes it takes a conscious effort to get out of it. Extroverts, on the other hand, they're more prone to re-energizing via the external environment. They certainly have the ability to get lost in their own thoughts, but as a general rule, they tend to anchor themselves in the external environment. It's needed in order to fulfill aspects of their personality traits. So grounding techniques. A great way to describe grounding techniques are, well, first, let me back up. So the way you can experience this moving forward is whenever you're recognizing negative emotions in your body, it's instead of thinking, oh no, great, I'm going down this path again. I want you to start utilizing that as an opportunity to recognize, awesome, this is my body's physiological way of telling me I need to be a little bit more mindful of some of the thoughts that were going on in my brain. If I can do that, I'll understand why I feel the way I do. If we find ourselves being completely consumed by our mind, spiraling out of control, and really not feeling like we have the ability to organize our thoughts and sort of have that higher level of awareness, grounding techniques are an excellent way to sort of pull yourself out of your head. And really, the best way to do this, the first and foremost, and we're going to practice this a little bit later, is to just observe your surroundings visually. The idea is you're getting out of your head and you're becoming more aware of your present environment. We've all done this before. The difference is now you're trying to do it without the interference of your brain. And so a great way to do this is everybody's sitting in a room right now, I assume. Everybody's in an environment of some sort right now. The goal is to just look around your environment and just to observe it as it is. Sounds so simple, but it's not. We're all going to screw this up, and I'll tell you why. The first thing we do when we start looking around our room is our brain's going to start putting labels on everything we see. Mouse, cup, cell phone, 1,000 leaves blowing across my window right now. My point to that is our brain automatically intervened. It was natural, it was habit, it was instantaneous. We lost the ability before we even started the exercise to be able to observe our environment without the brain interfering. So when you do this now, the goal is to sort of look around your room, get grounded in the external environment, but this time you don't put labels on anything. You're literally just looking at your environment for what it is. You're looking at it as if you're seeing it for the first time and you don't yet have the ability to put labels on anything. Some of you might be successful in this for maybe a few seconds. Guaranteed your brain's going to intervene. Guaranteed. The purpose of this is for you to become more aware every time your brain hijacks you and takes you away from the present moment. Your only goal in these grounding techniques is to be able to slow down your thought process, get grounded in the external environment, and be more of the interventions your brain's trying to impart on you. We're going to practice this in a few minutes, but one of the things you might notice is if you're able to observe your environment without the brain interfering, you're literally going to see the environment in high definition. You're going to be able to experience colors with more vibrancy. You're going to be able to see details and nuances in a way that you didn't before. You're going to notice the different way that the light reflects off certain objects. You will literally be seeing your environment in the present moment consciously for the first time without your brain interfering. Again, you're only going to get glimpses out of that for a few seconds. And for the sake of time, I'm going to go kind of quickly on the others, but we're going to get a chance to practice here in a little bit. Another great grounding technique, not using the gift of sight, is to use the gift of sound. Close your eyes, And your sole purpose is to observe all the sounds that are happening in your external environment right now, again, without label. You've taken away the gift of sight. So when you're listening to the gift of sound, your brain's going to have a tendency to interfere, to create images, to put labels, to identify these sounds. It's kind of like the rabbit trail, right? As soon as your brain kicks in, it starts to take you on a journey. Your only goal in these grounding techniques is to be aware of that brain intervening, be aware of those thoughts, be aware of those images, and then take your focus back to the present moment, focusing on the sounds around you. You can also do this with your sense of smell. And then this is kind of a quirky one. Again, these are all things we typically take for granted, but when's the last time you put your hand on the desk you're sitting in front of, or wherever you are right now, and just sort of notice the textures, maybe the temperature changes? You're getting grounded in the present moment. The arms of the chair you might be sitting in. Again, we're consumed by our thoughts 99% of the time, unless we make a conscious effort to get out of our brain and experience the present moment. So these are just a few examples of some grounding techniques. We're going to come back to one of them in just a minute. Okay, so let's do a couple recaps, and then we're going to try some meditation. Your thoughts are the genesis for virtually everything you feel in life. And those feelings will always influence your behaviors, which will in turn influence your thoughts. Your thoughts are the genesis for all of this. You are the only one that can create thoughts for you. There's an old saying, you become what you think about. There's a very large part of truth to that. You are the only one that can create your thoughts. But if you're not aware of your thoughts, or if you're detached from your thoughts, or if you're consumed by your thoughts, you get lost in your thoughts. You lose that awareness, you lose that empowerment, you lose that autonomy to create thoughts that work to your advantage. When you become present, you automatically diminish that brain activity in terms of thought creation. When you're able to do that, you automatically diminish those negative feelings of anxiety, stress, being overwhelmed, right? We're going to try a meditation here, and the purpose of this is really to give you the experience of being present and observing your thoughts. Anybody can listen to this presentation, read a book, hear a speaker, and understand this intellectually, but unless you experience it, it's very difficult to integrate it into a practice of your daily living that leads to positive outcomes in your life. So what, I have about 8 minutes, right, Joy? We're going to do this relatively quickly, but I'm going to ask everybody to just sit comfortably in their chair. And if you're comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes. And the first thing you're going to do is you're just going to focus on your breath. And the reason that a lot of meditations focus on breath is because when you focus on your breath, you automatically bring yourself into the now. In other words, the breathing always has to occur in the present moment. It anchors you in the now. And so for maybe 15, 20 seconds, I just want you to bring your attention to your breath. Allow yourself to become more in tune with your breath. You don't have to change anything about your breath. Just bring your attention to it. And as you're sitting here breathing, I want you to become more in tune with all the nuances that are occurring in your body. For example, when you inhale, you should notice air entering your nose, traveling down your nasal passages. You might even feel that cool sensation go into your lungs. You notice your lungs expanding. There might be a brief pause, and then your lungs naturally contract. It doesn't require any effort from you. Your body just does it intuitively. And as that air exhales, you're going to notice it going back up through your nasal passages, exiting your nostrils. And if you really pay close attention, you're going to notice that that air is a degree or two warmer when it exits your body than the cool sensations you got when it entered your body. just take a few seconds and be a little bit more mindful of your breath. And as you do that, allow your body to sort of slowly relax, unwind, and just kind of find itself in a comfortable position. And as we're sitting here calmly and quietly, you're going to practice being present. And your sole goal right now is to just focus on your breath, the anchor of the now, the thing that always occurs in the present moment. That's it. And when your brain intervenes, and it will, guaranteed, your only goal is to identify with that soul or that spirit or that energy or that consciousness or that essence, that being, that life force that's you, that's separate, that's differentiated from the thought. Your only goal is to be the observer of that thought, monitor it, allow it to gently pass, and then bring your attention back to your breathing, back to the present moment. Anytime a thought arises, it's perfectly okay. Remember, you're just practicing being the observer, being aware of that thought, monitoring it, allowing it to gently pass, and then bringing your attention back to the present moment. We're going to try this for about 30 to 45 seconds, and we're going to sit here in silence. When your thoughts wander, when images pop up in your head, allow it to happen, and just bring your attention back to your breathing in the present moment. I hope that some of you were able to experience being present and focusing on your breath without your brain interfering, without your thoughts interjecting. If you weren't, that's expected. I hope you were then able to at least practice being the observer, monitoring and watching those thoughts pass by and bringing your attention back to the present moment. Now I'm going to ask you to open your eyes again. And this time you're going to observe your environment for just a few seconds. And you're going to try to do that as it is, without labels, without thought, without intervention. When your thoughts pop in, when they interfere, which they will, that's okay. Be aware of it. Bring your attention back to the present moment. Maybe if you're fully present, you're seeing what I mean by visualizing your environment in high def for the first time. And then I'm going to ask you to do one more weird thing. I'm going to ask you to hold up your hand in front of your body. And I'm going to ask you to stare at this hand for just a few seconds. This is a hand you take for granted every day of your life. This is a hand that we've judged, we've used, we've abused, we've put lotion all over it, we've stared at our wrinkles, we've trimmed our fingernails. Today, we're just going to look at that hand as it actually is, without any interference from our hand. And you're going to be able to observe your hand in the present moment and notice numerous nuances about it that you hadn't before. Okay, crew, you got lucky. For the sake of time, I'm not going to make you do anything that's odd and experiential. It makes you feel slightly uncomfortable. These are some final thoughts real quick. The goals of today were for you to recognize the impact of your thoughts. Everybody intellectually grasps that But unless we practice developing a higher awareness of our thoughts, we don't have the ability to change those thoughts, to be the creator of our own thoughts and make sure those thoughts are working for us and not against us. Become the gardener of your thought garden. Use your brain. Your brain is an analogy to a garden. The garden doesn't care what you plant in it. It will create anything you put in it, right? Just as our brain will create any thought that we allow ourselves to produce. And then when we practice being present, we're automatically developing the ability to calm our thoughts, which by law has to diminish negative sensations, emotions like anxiety, being overwhelmed, or depression, right? Being present allows you to calm your mind. It doesn't change circumstances in your life, but it does allow you to empower yourself to manage those thoughts better. Choose the genesis of the ultimate outcomes in your life with a more conscious intent. Okay, folks. Thank you for listening to The Power of Presence, Kicking Anxiety's Butt. Here's my contact information. If anybody would like to discuss this more or would like to reach out for counseling services, I am certainly available. Feel free to give me a call or email me. I'm going to abruptly end and say thank you for your time. Back to you, Joy.
Thank you so much, Chad, for the good counseling session and the medication. Prior to this event, I have received a couple of students emailing me requesting for the recording. So we appreciate you very much. We do have, let me see, and get back to my PowerPoint here. Next is the Q&A. Is there any questions from our listener today?
Sorry about that, Joy. We're running a little bit late, so if there aren't any questions, that helps me make up my time.
Sure. You're just on time. You're okay. You're quite on time. So next is our Q&A session. So let me see in the chat box. Okay, so before we come on this, I would like to have Dr. Dickens address our listeners today.
Hello, just glad to be here in between meetings and glad that you were able to hear from Chad today. So thank you, Chad, for being with us. I'm sure we'll get lots of feedback from your session, especially when it goes out as a recording. So I'm wondering if you have suggestions for them, since we're in week 14, I believe, and they're getting ready to go through Thanksgiving. Any suggestions for managing having to do their classwork during these last few weeks, especially under sort of the strain of balancing it with holidays and not being around a whole bunch of people? That's our hope, and just how to balance all of that.
Well, okay, I'm gonna cheat a little bit and revert back to my presentation. Be conscious of your thoughts because there is light at the end of the tunnel. You've already done the hard part. You've already established the endurance, right? So when you start to feel overwhelmed, recognize all of the accomplishments you've already achieved this semester. Remember to stay grounded. Again, you've made it this far. You've demonstrated to yourself the ability to persevere. So if you can maintain that mentality without the negative skew of maybe some of those self-inflicted wound type thoughts of, I can't do this, I'm too overwhelmed, the semester's going horribly, recognize that's only a partial picture. That's an incomplete reality of what you've accomplished thus far. So be conscious of those thoughts. Reframe those thoughts, create thoughts that are more productive, beneficial, holistic, and realistic to the situation you're actually in. You automatically give yourself an increased ability to achieve your goals, which you are significantly more than halfway of doing. So.
Yeah, and I'd actually, maybe we could also talk to them as parents, because I'm not a parent. However, I have a nephew who just started. Uh, this was his first year at TCC. And there are lots of suggestions I would love to give to him, but of course, he is not listening to a word that I'm saying. So, as parents, can you give maybe, and I just can't imagine um, trying to get someone to do what you know is really good for them, and they don't hear from you. They don't seem to hear. So can you give suggestions of parenting during the times of, well, just parenting during these times when little people have minds of their own and they don't always listen to what we know to tell them.
Sure. It's hard to give very specific parenting information because every parenting dynamic is a little bit different, right? But what I will say is that, and maybe this is a bit of a short-sighted way to look at it, but at this time in our lives, in terms of parenting, in terms of profession, in terms of schooling, in terms of keeping things balanced in our life, there are very few opportunities to really thrive. And if the expectation is that we should be thriving right now, that may not necessarily be realistic. I appreciate the motivation and the standard people set for themselves. That's intrinsic motivation, right? That's the only thing that's sustainable. But maybe it's a good opportunity to sort of step back and recognize, or be able to look that individual in the mirror that always seems to stare back, and ask yourself, am I doing an adequate job right now? Am I doing the best job that I can right now? Am I still providing as best I can emotional support for my child? Am I still giving them the most precious gift I have, which is time? And if you can say that, you're probably surviving to the best extent possible. I don't like the word surviving, but to some extent we all are right now. Your kid's not thriving either. They may have adapted to the circumstances, again, as best they can. But ultimately, if you can look in the mirror and say you're doing what you're capable of right now, there should be a lot of comfort in that, right? And not to equate this to school or letter grades, but if we can get a C plus, a B minus, or even a B plus in situations like this, to an extent, that is a very, very large accomplishment. So again, I know that's not specific parenting advice, but any advice I can ever give somebody from a counseling perspective is based on the input that they initially provide to me in the session. You're the expert in your life. I'm here to genuinely listen, try to understand, join, and help you figure out those kind of outcomes. So I recognize some people have more obstacles to sufficient parenting, if you will, than others right now. But I'm also going to stick with the bias that everybody has an unconditional love for their child. And if you're doing the best you can right now, that's more than good enough.
Thank you very much, Chad. Is there any other questions? I know our time is, we're going to go back to our schedule. And Chad, feel free to stay, but I think we're going to have Jonica talk about the Students Who Are Parents organization, some related meetings pertaining to our last self-organized, student-organized session on December the 3rd. Feel free to stay, or if you're busy.
I'll stick around. I want to learn a little bit more. Thanks for that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. It was nice hearing from you today. And thank you, Joy, Dr. Dickens. All right, everyone. So as Joy mentioned earlier, our last meeting will be December 3rd. On December 3rd, we're planning some games and stuff to be playing. We're also trying to organize a little kind of like a little gift for you guys. If you could, one of the things we're trying to get approved through SGA is funding for t-shirts. So if you could email me what size you wear, we're going to be trying to purchase those. And also, if you are creative, we're looking for a shirt design still too. So yeah, if you're interested in making a design for our shirts, please hit me up, let me know. Next thing on our agenda is we still have a few vacancies on our executive board. So if you're interested in joining our executive board, just like raise your hand or something right now, or shoot me an email. I dropped my email address in the chat, so it's there for you. And that's pretty much it, I believe. Our vice president is also on. Oh, one last thing. We've got the bags of games to rent. They will be available probably in December. So we'll keep you guys updated on those. Jazzy, did you have anything else to add to that?
No, I'm good. Sorry that I look like a train wreck today. No, but we're really excited about the games. I feel like it's a really good idea and it can connect families over the holidays. So I'm super psyched about that.
So, Jonica, could you clarify something for me? I put a question in the room. So, are the t-shirts for the mothers, or was this through SGA for the single parents group, which would also include the dads?
It's actually not single parent. It's students who are parents. And yes, this will include the dads too.
Okay.
So dads or moms, both, just send me your the size. To get a shirt though, we are asking that you are on the Zoom call for December 3rd. So yes, SGA is actually holding a fundraising committee, or not fundraising, a funding committee meeting this next Tuesday at 5 o'clock to see if they're going to approve of us getting the funds to purchase these shirts.
Okay. So just then that brings up an additional clarification. If the next meeting is designed for the mothers and the t-shirts are designed for the mothers and the dads, and the next meeting does not invite the dads, how will they also be part of that to be eligible for the t-shirt?
The next event is not just for the moms, it is for the dads too. I would hope they're on the email list for the dad, like for students who are parents.
Okay, so we just want to make sure that we get them.
Do you know if they're included on the email list?
Not, I don't think they're included on the mothers list, mothers on a mission list, because it would be designed for mothers.
Yeah.
So then we would need to reach out to all students or a larger group of parents.
Would you be able to help with that?
Well, I can help with that. I just needed to, since we brought up the additional layer with the t-shirts, that changes the audience. So we need to work on that.
Okay, yes, please. I appreciate any help we can get with it. By all means, dads are definitely welcome too. It's difficult being a single father, just like it is being a single mother. And regardless, it's not just for single parents, it's also students who are parents. So,
so the student organization is designed for mothers and fathers, but the Thursday to Thursday noon meetings are for mothers.
Okay.
typically. But there can be joint activities with the mother's activity and with the student organization. And so it sounds like your next session is a joint one with the student organization. And that's how we would open it up to all of them.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you. So I was trying to post that survey links to the chat box. See if everybody would please fill out that questionnaire, that'd be great. So this would help us improve our future coordination of these events. And feel free to tell us your needs also. So Janica, is there any other comments about the student organization?
No, that would be all.
Okay, so on the other hand, let me see on the PowerPoint here. So, okay, so with the help of Dr. Dickens and some of our office students and Janica and the student officers, we have placed an order for the 7 bags for the single, I mean, not single, for the moms. Is that right, Dr. Dickens? Yeah, so these are the weekend bags to rent. We're still waiting for the items to arrive. There's some very exciting games for children. And we have some different things for you to sign to make sure, for safety reasons, when you play those games, make sure it's safe for the kids, and make sure return, we'll say 1 or 2 weeks for you to check out to use with your kids. And so when it's arrived, we will need the officers to help to put the bags together. Let me see. So we're waiting for it to arrive.
Yeah, and any member of the group can help. I mean, and I do want to just clarify one aspect of how the group works is, currently we have a grant that allows us to work with the mothers. And that is extremely helpful to us. And so we're glad to have had this funding to sponsor activities where we can specifically work with mothers. However, a major part of the grant is that we work diligently to develop an internal process within TCC that serves the mothers as well as we can serve the dads as well. So ultimately, we have money this year and we anticipate getting money next year. Ultimately, the goal is for us to go out and find donors, find partners who can provide this type of service in an ongoing basis, where we know that we have funding to do things to support mothers and dads. So that's why the student organization is so important. It's where this group will eventually land completely. So we won't be limited by whatever the funding is that this organization has done this year. We want to be able to go find our own funding so that the student organization is always supporting mothers and fathers. So that's where we're going. And so take advantage of this year where there's external funding from this one source, but we're also thinking of what sources we need for the future through the student organization. That's why I really wanted to emphasize that the group, the student organization, is really serving both mothers and fathers.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Dickens. I know several of the student members have another meeting, so we're gonna end it here. Yeah, for your meeting. I know, Jonica, you have another meeting, right, at 1? Okay, yeah.
Busy.
So, yeah, thank you very much. I'm gonna stop the recording.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You
Thank you
too.
all.
Hi guys, thank you for having me.
Bye.
All right, thank you. Take care. Happy Thanksgiving. I've stopped the recording.